This is Digitakt II. It's Elektron's new sampler slash sequencer slash MIDI controller, all in a little box that I think can fulfill a purpose in any musician's setup, be it as a standalone groove box, as the MIDI brain for larger hardware setup, as a sequencer for your favorite plugins, or really anything in between. It has a lot of the features that we've come to expect from Elektron, such as the amazing build quality. It also has the satisfyingly clicky keys, as well as an intuitive user interface where you always know which knob corresponds to which parameter on the screen, because the left knob corresponds to the left parameter and the right knob to the right parameter. Combine that with the many dedicated buttons that allow you access to these parameter pages, and it makes for a user experience that allows you to easily develop muscle memory and use this like an instrument. And last but not least, the famous Elektron sequencer, which made Elektron so successful in the first place, where you can on a per step basis decide exactly which sound is playing and in which way it is being affected by locking in parameters, similar to automation on a computer, but as you can see, in a much more hands-on fashion. You just select a step, turn a parameter, and it's locked in. Another reason why I think this can fit into anyone's setup is the flexibility of the sequencer. There are so many ways of operating it or of entering notes. For example, there's the step edit, in which we just select the steps, and now we have entered our kick drums. Or there's live record mode. And lastly, there's the step record mode. But before we get into that, I want to introduce a feature that is new to Digitakt II, and that is the trig modes. Usually the buttons down here play your 16 tracks directly when you press them, such as this. But the newly introduced trig modes offer you different options. For example, in velocity trig mode, you take your currently selected track, which in my case now is the hi-hat, and lets you play it at different velocity levels, similar to an MPC, with low velocity to high velocity and anything in between. Of course, we can also sequence this. So now let's go into step record mode, which is a sequencer mode that will advance one step in the sequencer each time you enter a new note. Now we go into velocity mode and enter a few different velocities. And now we've got a sequence with varying velocities on the hi-hat. But that's not all. We got more trig modes on offer, and the retrig mode will re-trigger your sound at varying speeds. So not at all or very fast. And you can even combine this retrig mode with the previously recorded velocity mode. So now let's record retrigs on top of the varying velocities. Again, step record, retrig mode, and let's go. And you can see how quick and easy it is to make a more interesting sequence this way, rather than just having a single steady hit on every step. And finally, there is the preset pool trig mode, and this allows you to play and record completely different sound presets on just a single track. I almost forgot, but there's actually a completely new sequencer inside, and that is the Euclidean sequencer. And this one really allows you to come up with new patterns super quickly. So let's create some percussion with this sound here. Turn on the Euclidean sequencer. And now all we got to do is turn up the number of pulses. So this determines how many hits we want within our timeline. 1 hit, 2, 3, 4. And so on, and it will spread them evenly. And we can add a second layer of hits to that using this knob. And let's play them. We can even shift them around on the timeline. And if we like what we're hearing, we can commit this to our sequence by pressing Function and turning the Euclidean sequencer off. And now it's all saved to the pattern. Another great new addition, in my opinion, is the velocity mod feature. And what this means is that as you are entering different velocities into the sequencer, not only are you changing the volume of your sound, but you can also change 4 parameters of your choosing per track. So let's take this sound here.
You know who it is.
And assign some parameters. First, let's go to sample rate reduction because it's pretty obvious. And now turn up the amount. And now as I am triggering different velocities,
You know who it is. You know who it is. You know who it is. You know who it is.
the sample rate reduction goes up until we got a mess here. Of course, we can fine tune this.
You know who it is. You know who it is. You know who it is.
Let's add a few other parameters. So now, as my velocity is going up, I'm introducing sample rate reduction, bit reduction, and reverb.
You know who it is. You know who it is. You know who it is. You know who it is.
That's already pretty cool in itself. We can also decide to decouple the volume from the velocity. So we are only affecting these parameters with our velocity and keep the volume out of it. We can do that in the setup here. Turn this off. So now the volume stays the same.
You know who it is. You know who it is. You know who it is.
But the effects or the modulations are changing. And the interesting thing is that on our trig parameter page, we have a velocity parameter. And we can now use this as a macro knob to introduce the sample rate reduction, bit reduction, and reverb. So let's play the sequence.
You know who it is. You know who it is.
And play with this.
You know who it is. 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 You know who it is.
So this is a really cool option if you want to introduce some macros that control multiple parameters within your pattern, similar to the old performance modes that the Analog 4 or the Analog Rhythm were offering. And more good news, velocity is not the only way in which you can set up macro controls like this. In the setup, you'll find aftertouch, breath control, and modulation wheel, which all allow you the same kind of macro setups. Speaking of modulation, Digitakt II also has more LFOs available. On audio tracks, you now have 3 LFOs, and on MIDI tracks, you have 2 LFOs. And now let's take a look at the MIDI functionality where things have improved too. For one, you can now send up to 16 MIDI CC parameters per MIDI track to an external synthesizer. And the way you can assign these MIDI CCs has gotten a lot easier too with the MIDI learn function. Just click MIDI learn and turn a knob on your synthesizer and it's locked in. And now we can change this value from over here. Another seemingly small addition which actually makes this so much more useful is the ability to name these parameters. We can go in and give it a name and done. This makes it so much easier to know what exactly is going on rather than having just value 5, value 6 and so on the display, because now I know this knob controls this knob. And the best part about this is once you assigned all your synthesizers MIDI CCs to the Digitakt, you can even save this as a template. So whenever I want to use my Korg monologue with the Digitakt, I hook it up, select this preset, and I've got all my values laid out for me. And I could go on, but these are just some of the reasons why I think Digitakt II is the best way to get into Elektron right now. It's got a great user interface, which is easy to learn, very intuitive, it's highly capable and flexible, and can be useful in any setup. And furthermore, this has a much more powerful processor than its predecessor. And as we know, Elektron, they have a great track record when it comes to upgrading their devices. So I'm definitely very curious what's in the future for Digitakt II. If you want to get yours, head over to Perfect Circuit, link probably down there. Thanks for having me. Have a great day. Peace.